14 kilometers long, 100 meters wide at its narrowest, built by Israeli military to separate Gaza, used by Hamas for smuggling weapons into Gaza. The Philadelphi corridor is now a flashpoint of conflict. Hamas's oxygen pipeline choking IDF in Rafah, why Philadelphi corridor is crucial for Israel's security. A high-stakes deal that could release hostages, seal a ceasefire, and potentially avert a regional war remains paralyzed. Now, at the heart of the deadlock is two narrow strips of land: the Philadelphi corridor along the Gaza-Egypt border and the Netzarim corridor that cuts through Gaza. Now, these have become key battlegrounds as IDF fights Hamas. Now, even as US Secretary of State Antony Blinken concluded his latest Middle East tour, efforts to secure a deal were left in a limbo. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, unyielding in his stance, declared, and I quote, "Israel will not under any circumstances leave the Philadelphi corridor or the Netzarim corridor despite the enormous pressure both at home and abroad," unquote. Now, this brings us to some crucial questions. Can Israel's control of the Philadelphi corridor be compromised to secure a deal? Will Hamas ever agree to ceasefire without a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza? Is the Rafah border crossing the key to unlocking a hostage agreement? How far will Israel go to maintain control of these corridors amid mounting international pressure? Could Egypt's opposition to Israeli control of Rafah derail negotiations altogether? Now, on May 30th, Israel made a controversial move by taking full control of the Philadelphi corridor as part of a military operation aimed at preventing Hamas from rearming. During the operation, Israeli forces uncovered over 20 tunnels and 82 access points used by Hamas for smuggling. Now, this move, intended to cut off Hamas's supply lines, sparked fierce resistance not only from Hamas but also from Egypt. In response, Egypt closed its side of the Rafah crossing, halting the movement of people and vehicles and vowing to keep it shut until control is returned to the Palestinians. Since the Hamas-led attack on October 7, 2023, which targeted Israeli communities near Gaza, Netanyahu's government has refused to cede control of the corridor. Now, according to Israeli officials, maintaining this control is the only way to prevent Hamas from rearming. However, Hamas remains steadfast in demanding a full Israeli withdrawal as a precondition for any hostage deal. Now, the situation has prompted frantic diplomatic efforts in Qatar and Egypt, where negotiators are grappling with the possibility of a compromise. American, Egyptian, Qatari and Israeli officials have been exploring ways to balance Israeli security needs with Hamas's demands. A central focus of the talks has been the possibility of limiting Israel's military presence in the corridor, a proposal aimed at satisfying Israel, Hamas and Egypt. Now, the Philadelphi corridor is a narrow stretch of land about 8 miles long and roughly 100 yards wide that runs from Israel's border to the Mediterranean Sea. Established under the 1979 Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty, it has become a focal point of the conflict due to the tunnels beneath it, which Hamas has reportedly used to smuggle weapons and other supplies into Gaza. Now, Israel sees control of this strip as vital to its national security, while Egyptian border guards have been policing the area under an agreement with Israel since 2005, following Israel's withdrawal from Gaza. Egypt, meanwhile, has its own stakes in the situation. Egypt fears that if Palestinian civilians flood across the border, it could destabilize Egypt's fragile economy. Moreover, Egypt views Hamas as an adversary due to its origins as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, which LCC's government ousted from power in 2013. Now, the Egyptian government has made it very clear that it does not want to give Hamas any foothold in its territory and has warned Israel to avoid any actions that could jeopardize the landmark 1979 peace agreement between the two countries. Meanwhile, for Palestinians in Gaza, the situation is one of increasing isolation. Now, Egypt is the only country other than Israel that borders Gaza, so Israel's control of the corridor is likely to be viewed by Palestinians as a sign of increasing isolation. Now, as negotiations drag on, the world holds its breath, wondering if a deal will be struck before the conflict spirals even further out of control.